Well, welcome to our Thursday evening solar story. This is John Sarver. I'm a GLREA board member and I host some of these sessions. And first thing I'd like to do is, well, thank you all for attending, but I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, Homeland Solar, Harvest Solar, and Sri Energy. Who do I always forget? And probably most of you are members. If you're not, we'd love to have you join, which you can easily do on our website. Just go to glrea.org and you'll find it's very easy to kind of join up online. We need your support for both our educational and advocacy efforts. Tonight, Matt Hayes, who has a home in Grand Rapids, he's been a solar professional for over 15 years now. He's going to tell us his solar story, which includes a solar system, a battery system, a smart electrical panel, and some efforts he's made to do electrification. And let me have you all kind of mute yourselves during the presentation, please. And with that, Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, John, and thank you, John, both of you for helping me set this up, and then thank you to the sponsors and then GLREA as well. It's interesting. Let me share my screen here. And that. And it's interesting that you call this story, and I really like that because what I'd like to do today is talk about kind of how we came to do what we did on our property. And I'm probably going to talk less about the financials than typically would be expected. There's many resources out there that you can look at and see about the financials, but I'd like to talk about why we did it, the process of getting it done, the installation, and then some of the good and the bad of what has happened. And start here by giving you some background. Again, Matt and Chantal Hayes. We live in Grand Rapids. Been very fortunate to be in solar for the last 15 years, and there are many people that have been in it longer than that, but that's probably when the launch of the recent efforts, we'll call it the modernization of solar, happened. Have done many roles in it, and have had experience which helped along the way here. Not to say it gave me a leg up, but at the same time, we're able to do some better decision making as we did it. The house itself is built in 1986, so it's not a new house, it's not an old house. We'll talk about the roofing here in a moment, which we were very fortunate that it was in that lifespan where it had been re-roofed, and allowed us to do some things on a more cost-effective basis. We purchased property in 2019. And that gives you kind of an idea of, as I go through here, the timeline, and as everything else. I called this specifically electrification. I know this is solar story, but the kind of the thought process here for us is really these projects that we performed were kind of hitting the trifecta of the economics. Solar at the time with the full net metering credit made a lot of sense. The environmental impact, we were very much, I'm a true believer and have been in the industry for those reasons and many more. But then also, as I've listed here, at time of purchase, the house has a gas furnace. It still has a gas furnace, gas water heater, gas clothes dryer, and gas stove and oven. And we wanted to try to slowly move those over to the electrification or electric so that we could have the resiliency of utilizing solar and battery storage when the power went out. And the resiliency was very important in that last bullet point there. Now, I don't know how many of you are on well and septic, but if the power goes out, you also, eventually you lose power or you lose water as the well pressure runs out. And the inability to even flush your toilet is a bit annoying, and it's definitely come down to more than a few times of unfortunately having that situation. So I'll jump right in, and I'll do these in the order that we installed them. You know, whether or not it makes sense from a story perspective to have it that way, that it just is. The solar itself, it's a 7.41 kW. This picture was taken 2 weeks ago. I really like it from a matter of it was a nice, beautiful day, but also I wanted to show you, you know, the impacts of potentially from snow and what the winter is like here in Michigan on solar. So the specifications, and I know many of you know what modules are, but the modules themselves are the power producing elements. And there were 19 Jinko 390 watt modules. The solar edge inverter I'll show you here in a moment. And then 2-to-1 optimizers. The optimizers help us and help residential systems specifically when we have these roof type systems where they aren't on the same angle or if they're partially shaded, things along those lanes where they will find the optimal power output for a pair of modules instead of an individual module. Could really geek out on some of the technical stuff here, but we'll just talk about that. They help make sure that it is the most efficient output as any one moment in time. And just want to do shout out that initially, and I'll talk more about it later, but our installer was Michigan Solar Solutions. You know, we found that going with the local brand was very important, and I'll talk more about that here in a second. So how did we come to, you know, end up getting solar? You know, this is probably for me was the easy one because, you know, being in the industry, it was kind of second nature and was able to go through it. But there just in general for some resources, and I really want to give a shout out to the GLRAA, the document that you guys have published from a matter of the process of going solar was very beneficial. You know, I've spent some time reading it. I really think that guide gives you an idea of what you're going to have happen when you know, when you go solar, what are the steps to go through, really were, you know, a big thing. Another one that I found to be very useful, both from a matter of connecting with contractors, as well as just the guide for finding out more about solar in general, is Energy Sage. I think it's energysage.com. It's an online marketplace, and they will, you know, literally you'll just fill out a little quiz. They'll provide you with the questions as you go through it. You know, they'll ask about your roof replacement. You know, when was the last time your roof was replaced? Does it need to be replaced? Do you have trees on the property? Do you need to take trees down? You know, there are many questions that as you go through that they will help you find the best or potential contractor for you. 2 of the 8 companies that we connected with when we were getting quotes were found through Energy Sage. They were not the successful contractors, but it was good to have them in the mix. And I should state that we began this process at the end of 2020 or middle of 2020. So we were definitely dealing with some COVID stuff throughout all of it. So this was some of these will not be as relevant, but we were able to get through that. We did get 5 site visits out of the contractors. I've talked to a couple different people here recently who have been trying to go to solar, and it seems more and more solar companies want to wait until the very end to do site visits, which is understandable from a cost perspective, but it is also very, very important to have done, both from a matter of mechanical and wiring and everything along those lines, but also just to be able to see the area, see the rooftop, make sure that things are going to go where they think they're going to go, and along those lines. We were very fortunate to have 4 proposals, and that, in my mind, is a very critical step. Should you decide to go solar, I highly recommend you get multiple proposals. I've had friends, family, and neighbors now that have, you know, knowing that I'm in the industry, they always come to me, and that is one of the first things I say is, that's great. If somebody has reached out to you about solar, make sure that you get multiple proposals. You never know what somebody is trying to do, but at the same time, it's just a great point of comparison. The proposals that we received were very detailed, and I'm very impressed with the systems. There's a few different kind of you know, you'll see the back end system of the solar proposal whenever you get it. There's Aurora and there's SolarGraph and a few others. They all, are using the same thing, but the data that you get is very, transparent, and it's very good to see. And it's, in my opinion, one of the better things of kind of the modern residential solar experience is getting the proposal, being able to see some of the stuff and all of that. Um, just to quickly point out here in the upper right here, the Michigan Solar Solutions, this is their Energy Sage landing page. This is kind of their review as you go through. So, it's just like Google. It basically is a marketplace or a forum that kind of gives you information on installers, and you can leave feedback and reviews. Very, very glad to see that Michigan Solar Solutions is a 5-star with 7 reviews. That's great to see. One of the things I wanted to point out here, and that I know I was going to talk about finances, but from a cash flow perspective, always good to know when you're going to be, having to make decisions on paying. In this particular setup, what we had planned for were at, they had 7 different steps. Basically, at contract signing, we had to pay down 30%. This allowed them to order material, book a crew, get us on the schedule, have things lined up so that we can, be able to move forward and get the installation started. And then the best part was you really weren't out the remainder until everything was up and running. They were very good about this. They made sure that we weren't having to pay until we were satisfied with the system. And fortunately, that was not too difficult to get to. I found this to be very, very interesting. If I put these 2 images and made them both blurry, you probably couldn't tell the difference. And I apologize. I know it's probably a little small on your screens, but on the left is what was proposed. So when they sent us a satellite image with a rendering on it, it almost came out exactly like what it looks like on the right. So this, I screenshot that image on the right just a couple weeks ago, and I was blown away by how accurate it was. And it's great to see. And I thought that it was a very unique and kind of interesting thing of modern technology, of being able to do this, remotely. And we were talking about Zoom meetings earlier and all that stuff. But for them to be able to put this together without, coming out and looking at it, this gets well along the way. Now, what I will say is this is a 2D image. And so one of the difficulties that we found in our solar installation is that the production did not meet the actual proposed. And much of this has to do with, well, I mean, there's really 3 factors that we came up with. One was shading from the south here. And you can see there are trees there, and they planned for those, but they really were more impactful in the winter than they had planned for. So as the sun got lower in the sky, you're impacted more by the trees there. And then the winter, speaking of winter, you can see that we really do not get much in the shoulder months, the 4 shoulder months. And that is because our modules are under snow. That picture I showed just a little bit ago, the low tilt angle of the one side really causes the snow to not melt off. But I will say, by the way, that is something that when it does come off, it comes off in a hurry. So if you have an exposed side of your house where people walk and everything else, it is a consideration to make sure you think of, from a matter of that snow has to come off eventually. And it is something that can happen quite significantly. And then the third one is that low tilt angle. So the tilt angle of the modules being pretty low and it not facing due south definitely gives kind of a loss and not quite as much as what we had planned for. So this came out to be 15 or 18% less than what we had planned for. It's still sufficient and still significant, but it definitely is not what they had projected. The installation itself was fairly flawless. And this is one of those things, and I know Michigan Solar Solutions really prides themselves on their installation. They actually send teams to competitions at the National Solar Conference, where I think they were runner up a couple years ago, and so they really pride themselves on the installation side of things. They did a fantastic job. It took 2 days, two crews, one on the roof and then one working on the interconnection at the meter and at our panel board. So very, very impressive. Minimal intrusion on the house itself. So, inside the house, other than having to get access to the panel board, we were very fortunate that they didn't have to duct too much and just had to get into the attic for just a little bit of space. So very fortunate. And I was very impressed with the installation itself. Very, very simple. Just quickly to talk about the system as you can see it here. These rails are brought out, cut the length. These are the penetrations these are penetrating. And so, obviously we thought about it and made a decision that we were not going to re-roof at the time. And I think that was still the right decision because, we plan on a 20-year lifespan of the solar array without any concerns, and we were hopefully be able to get that much out of it, and we're hoping to be able to go that long without having to re-roof the house. It has been over 4 years now, and no concerns or no issues with the roof. Change gears here, and this is something that is a little bit different. The span smart panel. So the smart panel in this sense, I'll start with the why. So knowing that we were going to electrify, we wanted to add an electric stove, an electric clothes dryer, eventually an EV, as we were discussing offline here. We needed to upgrade our panel. I think we had well below 200 amp panel. So we knew we were going to need to upsize it. And also knowing that the potential future of adding a battery, we were either going to have to add a critical load panel, or we could utilize span in that it acts as a standalone critical load panel, which is very, very unique. As far as I know, and I look forward to hearing the question and answering if anybody else will be able to offer this, if there's anything else out there like it. But we were very interested in it. And as a matter of fact, I think we were one of the first ones in Michigan. And I only know that because they didn't offer them in Michigan, and I kept hounding them. And then the moment they were available, we made sure to get online and be able to get it. And yes, the slides will make sure that we get those out to you. Everything you see here other than RY is from their website. So all of this is on span.io. I highly recommend, should you be interested in more information, you go there. I just screenshotted their information and provided that here. So I did not create these. Just want to make sure that that's clear. Another very, very interesting part of the smart panel here is that it monitors everything with CTs on each circuit. So it is built-in monitoring on each circuit, on both 110 and 220. And we are able to also, as I said, with the critical load panel, you are able to shut off a circuit. Now, you can shut off a circuit to the point that it will not have, significant energy going through it, but this is not something where you can be working on that load or that circuit with just it being turned off at the CT for sure. And that is for the Y. This is these slides will be available, and I know this is rather small. In the bottom left, you can see the original panel. It's quite a mess. It was very, very well loaded. It was probably undersized from the initial build. It should have been larger. And it is quite nice now. You can see up here, This is after the battery has been installed, after the solar has been installed, and then this is not a critical load panel here next to it. It is a just an additional circuit because as we added for the water heater, as we added for the clothes dryer, we started eating up our real estate in the board itself. And so you know, for a 2-to-1 with 220 versus 110, you end up just eating up real estate. And so we moved more circuits for some of the lower amperage circuits over there, and being able to do that to open up real estate to be able to put in there. The process for getting a span is very different. It's almost like a Tesla versus a car. You work with span directly. There's no local contractor that you would call to get it. At least, you know, at the time when we purchased it, you work directly with span. You call them up. They say, you know, they only have 3 tiers of pricing. You say, this is what I want. And then they coordinate the installation. They coordinate finding the contractor. They take care of everything. And it's also for all one cost, which was great. It was, you know, there wasn't any negotiation. There wasn't any from a matter of having to you know, search and find it for ourselves. They took care of everything. Now, I say that in that we ended up with a contractor that we still work with. He is our electrician today for all of our other projects. So it was very fortunate for us that he turned out to be a great contractor. So the span team took care of everything, and was a very pleasant system. I highly recommend going through them. This is the kind of the additional upside for the span system is the app itself. This is, and I apologize. I know that these are small and hard to see, but wanted to make sure that it got on here. This first image here on the left is your landing page, and it shows the energy flow at any one time, any instant in time. And in fact, these bubbles kind of it shows everything moving. So on the left there, you'll see that we, at that moment in time, we're getting 1.5 kW of solar. We were drawing 0.1 kilowatts from the grid, and then we were feeding back into the battery. And I'm sure that 0.1 coming out of the grid was just noise. So basically it was charging up the battery. And I think I did this right before that windstorm the other day, and I was charging up the battery just in case there was an outage. So this was pushing out power. And the second picture here is showing real live time data of your circuits. So this will basically show from, you know, largest to lowest use. So as things change, it will shuffle the cards, as they call it, up and down to show what all is being used and what is occupying the most power. And then finally, you can get some stats. Like this is really where, you know, it's important to be able to look at each of the different systems and show that, you know, you use this much power from the grid, you use this much power from solar, this much power from the battery, should you need to. So it's all great. And I look at this daily. You know, it's one of those things that if you have it and you use it, it can be very beneficial. You can see if something, you know, if somebody left a electric blanket on, or somebody left something on, you can see it and know that there's something that's drawing power, vampiring. Moving on to the PowerWall, or the home energy storage system. Again, these images are from Tesla's website. So this is not my house, and it's not that clean of a system. That would be very nice, but no, that's not mine. So just reading here, PowerWall is a compact home battery that stores energy generated by solar or from the grid. You can use this energy to power the devices and appliances in your home day and night, during outages, or when you want to go off grid. With customizable power modes, you can optimize your stored energy for outage protection, electrical bill savings, and more. And I think one of the things that we, we'll get into here in a second, but this last part where it talks about the different types, I think a lot of people think about the uh, outage protection, but they don't think about some of the other things. And we'll talk about that here in one moment. So our installed specifications, we did end up with the Tesla Powerwall 3. It's got 13.5 kilowatt hours of capacity, 10 kilowatt hour output. It is AC coupled. So this is one where we are, it has an integrated inverter in it. So we don't have to have a secondary inverter, and we do not utilize our solar inverter. So we have two inverters in our systems. Another key thing here is the backup gateway to islanding device. This is almost, and this is the number 2 here. This is almost the most important thing, in my opinion, of the entire system. And I've got a diagram here in a little bit, but for those that don't know, when you have solar, you cannot generate, or the solar system is not allowed to operate when the grid is out. So if the grid goes down, the solar inverter will basically shunt or not produce power. This is so that you are not accidentally sending power back to the grid should they be operating on it. And so they call this, the islanding effect. You are not able to not able to basically operate without the grid. And the backup gateway 2 is the part of the system that allows us to do that. And it is quite impressive. And I have a slide here in just a moment that'll talk a little more about it, but it is the key and kind of the brains of the system. So talking again about and actually, I'm surprised I must have it on the next one. So similar polar process to solar. One huge thing is that you are probably going to have more choices on the technology and or the system. Now, I talked about it being an AC coupled system, and it is a single standalone battery versus, multiple batteries. And there are other technologies out there where if you have solar, you can get a single inverter that can do both. You can do a storage from SolarEdge that does both. You're going to have to understand a little bit more about how you want to approach the system and what you're trying to get out of it. We specifically bought this particular unit because of the AC coupling and because of the 10 kilowatt inverter, with the potential that, again, we have had multiple outages at this property. We knew we may need to be able to run everything up to the heater, but not the AC. And so we needed to have the power to be able to do that. Now, obviously, you're only going to be able to run that for an hour and a half if you're running full tilt, but at the same time, you need to be able to have that. We chose another local installer, the Green Panel. They have multiple offices throughout the state. Great group. And yeah, I'll definitely get to the financials here in just a second. The installation, surprisingly, the installation of the Powerwall took longer than the solar, which you would think that it wouldn't necessarily be that. But because of the order that we did it, the Green Panel Group almost had to reroute the entire solar array from basically where it came out of the inverter, because it needed to come to this gateway right here before it went to our panel board. So they had to almost reduct the entire system, which kudos to them. They made sure that they took care of it, and did a great job of cleaning up, from a matter of rewiring and making sure that everything internally and externally looked absolutely fantastic. So kudos to them, and definitely recommend them for this. Again, similar to Span, the Powerwall app is extremely useful. I'll work from left to right here, and I apologize. I know that these images are slow, or images are small. On the left is kind of your interface for how much you want to have stored at any one time. Similar to your your EV, you want to have about 80%. Well, they say on the Powerwall it doesn't really matter for the lifespan of it. So you can set it at any level you feel that would be, ideal. Now, this percentage is going to say what level will you go down to once the solar kicks off. So this is up high right now because we were anticipating a storm, and so I wanted to make sure that we had enough backup at the time. But should I lower this down to say a 20% backup versus 80% self power, it will charge during the day whenever should there be sunlight. And then at night, when it is using up, it will use the battery first before it goes to the grid. So you are getting the full usage of your solar over the duration of the day. And that can be adjusted. It can be adjusted on the fly. But obviously, for us, it isn't as impactful in the winter. So we keep it up about 80% just because we want to make sure that we have that outage. Should an outage happen, we're not going to have the solar to be able to supplement the battery to be able to have the resiliency that we may need. Here in the second panel, this is, funny enough, this is the energy flow as it shows it. And in January, we're just importing, like we're not exporting anything. And so that's pretty much what I'm talking about. In January, we're on a pretty slow month from the solar side of things. So it's only being used for kind of grid isolation. So, or grid tendency there. When we are, and this is kind of neat, we actually have 3 different apps that show us our solar output, and they show them in different ways, but at the same time it's a great comparison, and it allows us to make sure that things are where they should be. This is the landing page for the third image. Here is the landing page for your Tesla, and it shows, just like the span, shows you what you're producing on your roof. It shows what is happening with the Powerwall. It shows what is being used by the home, and then what is anything coming from the grid. So in this particular instantaneous instance, we're generating 1.5 kW on the roof. The home is using 1 kW, so therefore 0.5 kW or half a kW is being used to charge the Powerwall, which is great. Another nerdy little image here on the fourth image is the inflow outflow, at an instantaneous time, charges, discharges. So great to see. Very, very nice interface, super easy to use. And you can dig in quite a bit of data. You can also export it. So it's all very, very useful. So what did we end up with? Well, at the end of the day, this is how it all ended up. We have a solar system, and we have a grid that both feed into the Tesla backup gateway. So again, this is the first thing that as power is coming in, everything goes through that. Even before it hits, or it goes to the meter, then it goes to that is actually how it goes. But that's so the meter is right here in between. The Powerwall is here. So should the backup, it is basically the hub, as I call it. So it's the one, is the point guard. It's distributing all the different resources as it sees fit. It's really the brains, and make sure that, when things are being done properly, it's able to just let the grid go through. Or again, if the power goes out, it's going to shut off this part of it to allow the solar to work and go through and everything. We were unfortunate that we had an experience where we had a power outage. It was a very, very brief power outage, and I was sitting down here doing a Zoom call just like this, and had a small flicker on my laptop screen. The lights in the house didn't flicker. Nothing else in the house changed in any way, and the internet went out. And I was like, what's going on? Scrambled around trying to find my cell phone just to be able to hop back onto the call. And I realized that the power was out, but I had no idea. Like the gateway the battery, everything happened instantaneously and flawlessly and with no human intervention. Like it just was all of a sudden, boom, it was there. Funny enough, it was our internet provider was the reason that the power went out. That's why I didn't have any internet. They dropped something on the lines and they cut our power. So no internet, but we still had power. Um, this show, this shows here on the left. This is the Tesla power screen that I screenshotted during the outage. Showed that, yep, sure enough, the grid is out. And it was able to indicate to us that we had about 19 hours of backup power. The SPAN app, now this was an interesting find and something that I just want to talk to everybody about. The SPAN app is a cloud-based system and it is hardwired into our router. So without home internet, the SPAN was basically, it reverted back to its most recent setup. So with regard to what we were allowing to be powered and everything else. So without internet, we weren't able to change the SPAN during the outage. So we weren't able to change what was getting power, what wasn't getting power, any of that. It was a lesson learned that we had, that it was something that we wanted to make sure that for future we made sure that we understood what would be powered at any time, because if the power goes out and we lose internet, it can happen. Now, the likelihood we can still have internet and not power, so that is, but just something I just wanted to point out that happened. So that's good. This is bad. We had an inverter outage, and this is one of those things that you just have to be aware of. And you need to be thinking about that when you select a provider or an installer, that are they going to be around to make sure that if something goes, we all hope that this is a solid state now. Inverter has a 7 to 8 year plan, but you always have to think that if something goes wrong, what's going to happen? And we were lucky enough to select that, the inverter went down. We contacted Michigan Solar Solutions. They said, yep, we see it on our end too. It took longer than probably would have typically happened. It was busy season, everything else. It was a very super switch once they were able to get out here. The RMA process from SolarEdge through Michigan Solar Solutions was flawless. They basically said they had to send a technician out. They said, yep, it's down. SolarEdge sent out a new component and we were put up. However, this cost us 2.5 months of our prime production period for this last year. And it was extremely costly in the lifespan of the kind of payback period, if you want to talk about that, because we had to pay for the system replacement. This was not a warranted coverage. And we had an outage, and it was during the period of time when we would make the most money. So this was one of those things that had put a pretty big dent in the financials of the system. But on the other hand, we're just happy that, because MSS is still around and MSS is still in operation, we're able to get everything that we need to get done. So very, very happy with that. Somebody asked about the financials. And again, I know that this is a very small screen. I will make sure to share this. And I gave basically the side by side. I wanted to show that and I'll get to that question for John here in just a second. One very interesting thing, and we are a consumer's customer, and this particular bill that I'm showing here and that everybody can look at when they get the slides, it is showing that when we export, it is at the time of day. And so everybody understands, or I'm sure many of the people have heard about the summer peak period, when you're getting charged more during a window. Well, when we produce during that window, we are also getting the higher credit. Now, I need to fully caveat that we are full net metering. We were before the cap and we were on the original net metering program. So I don't have information on what that is. I'm sure GLRIA could very much fill you in on the particulars, or you could look at that. We were very fortunate in that we are a legacy into that program, and so we were able to get these time of use credits, full time of use credits during that period. And this is why I'm saying that power outage or the inverter outage during the summer is very painful for us, because that was when we were getting that there. And then finally, here's what everybody really wants to see: what did it cost us? So again, I put the dates on here because that's important. Things have changed, inflation and other things. There's definitely programs out there. The solar, this is yeah, so I'll let everybody see there. Initial payback period for solar was projected at 10 years. Poor winter condition that pushed it out to about 15 years. Now, we are not just wholly into this for the financial payback. That's very nice to have. We are doing it for as additional reasons with regard to the environmental aspect of things, but also from a matter of the resiliency that it offers when coupled with the energy storage. And this 15-year payback is based on no escalation. Obviously, there's escalation in the news now. I'm not a DTE customer, but that is in the news as well. And that is my last slide. I'm going to stop sharing here. Actually, and then we'll see what questions we have. All right.
Well, that was great, Matt. And if you'd like to raise your hand, it's probably easier because we have over 40 folks on the Zoom to raise a virtual hand because we can't see everybody on the screen. You can find your virtual hand down at least on my computer at the bottom under React, where you can kind of raise a virtual hand. Looks like Harvey.
John, if you don't mind, I'm going to go to the text questions. There's a couple in the chat that I'm going to
go right
answer.
ahead.
Yep. So Daniel, I gave you the costs, and then I did talk about the consumers. We are, I think I got everything that you answered there or asked there. John Richter, the warranty on the inverter, so material was covered. We were made whole from a matter of the Solar Edge inverter was covered on material front, but we only had I think a 2-year workmanship warranty on the installation. So we had to pay for the tech roll and the installation. And then I think I've got everything else there. So Harvey, go right ahead.
So I have a number of questions. The first one, in terms of all the proposals you got, did anybody bring you a proposal that had a solar inverter in it?
So no, and the reason I will say probably that on the energy storage side, we were already kind of set on Tesla. So from a technology point of view, we almost waited until a system such as the specifications that the PowerWall 3 had, that we were almost waiting for that exact specification. So yes, I've looked at SolarArc kind of on the side on my own, but no, we did not get a proposal with SolarArc.
Okay. And then looking at your battery, so the Tesla PowerWall, one time they had a different battery chemistry. Now they're running LFPs. What chemistry did you end up with?
It's funny. I almost knew this was going to be a question, and I didn't look. I meant to, and I know it's lithium ion. I am not sure if it's NMC or if it's LFP. I apologize.
No worries. Okay, and then as you looked at your span panel, Leviton has a panel out there. Did you run an evaluation between the span and the Leviton?
At the time when we bought it, Leviton did not have as robust of a system as they do now. I like Leviton as a system and kind of as a universe of communication and beyond just the panel. But at the time of purchase, Span was not, Span was the only one. And so Leviton did not have as robust of a system at that time.
Okay, so then in that you locked onto the Tesla system, you didn't look at a Briggs and Stratton energy solution.
We did. We would, I mean, Briggs and Stratton, or yes, we looked at many of them. Franklin, I'm forgetting many of the other ones, but yes, we looked at many of them, but they didn't meet kind of the quality standard that I was looking at from a matter of the different components.
Okay, interesting. Then can you program the Tesla's gateway such that you can choose to balance it off against the time of use with consumers, such that you could, in the wintertime, charge it during the night when you probably have lower fees, and then power the house during the day when you have higher fees, change that percentage based on a time of use plan marry-up?
I'm not sure, and I'm sure arbitraging is possible, because it's one of the things that they talk about. I have not done it. So my answer is, I believe it is possible. I haven't looked into it. At least from what you're talking about, Harvey, of using the grid. So we do it on the solar side, where we make sure that we use it as much as we try to use the solar during the day and pump out as much as possible, because we want to make sure that we're exporting during that window.
Okay, cool. Well, that takes care of all my questions.
Excellent.
Yeah, Matt, why don't you stop screen sharing? Might
Yep.
be easier to kind of see folks. There we go. Go ahead, Michael.
I can actually answer that question about programming your system to coordinate with your utilities time of day rate. And the answer is yes. For the PowerWall, you can put into the PowerWall what your utilities rates are for when, and then it will charge when it's less expensive, and then you can power the house when it's more expensive.
Fantastic. Any
Yeah,
other
we did.
questions? All right, so Daniel, I will say I am extremely happy with what we ended up with. There are definitely some bumps in the road. We ran into more than a few hurdles, but at the same time, having that, and it's amazing how giddy I was when the power went out and it all worked. Like the fact that after 4 years everything worked flawlessly and I didn't have to do anything, it was just, it felt good. One of the things, and actually this goes to Harvey, to your point about the Leviton, we kind of were ahead of the curve a little bit on the technology for what we wanted to do, and we knew we were going to have to wait, which is why we couldn't do it all at once and plan ahead and have it. It would have been so much easier to just do it cohesively with one installer and have it all done together in one thing, and we probably would have saved money because we would have got the ITC on the span. But I'm happy with where we are, and having it work is definitely one of those things. Now I just hope my inverter stays online.
Go ahead, Doug.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Matt, or everybody really. If you, I just put in a year ago, a whole house automatic generator, gas fired. And I'm curious what the value of that would be in your system, or a system that doesn't have it, to help maybe have a smaller battery system, or does the Tesla auctioneering program take that kind of thing into account?
So it's funny, I don't have this answer exactly, but I was flipping through, and some of the images I used to make my little graph I got from the Tesla PowerWall installation manual, and it actually did have, it called out a generator kind of parallel aspect. So I know that it is being considered, and it can be done. And I'm sure that it would just a matter of being able to use to supplement your resiliency when the power goes out.
I have been.
If I may add,
Sorry.
I think that the benefit of putting a generator together with a battery, if it's done right, and you have to have a specific, grade of generator that brings in like proper power and whatnot and communicates with the thing. But then you can run the generator at more or less optimal efficiency, and run the house and charge the battery at once. Just let it hum for a couple hours till your batteries are full at night, and then you shut it off. You can sleep at night quietly. The batteries run the house. So the efficiency of the generator and the runtime of the generator is greatly reduced if it's paired with even marginal battery size.
I have that set up, and it's a Generac generator, gas generator, which is integrated with the Tesla battery system, the Tesla Gateway. And it was particularly useful when we had power outage in the order of 5 days, and not an intermittent sun. I have two PowerWall 2s, and so on the days that this was in the winter, on the days that we had enough sun, I actually didn't use the generator at all. But some of the days whereby we had really used much, or we had basically run down the PowerWall 2s down to 20%, and the setup is such that then the generator would kick in automatically. In our setup, the Generac did not charge the batteries, but I too was ahead of the curve of just initially with the older Leviton panel, and did not have the benefit of the integration that the current snap panel has. I have one of those now, and I must say I enjoy the benefits as described. It's beautiful to see these things integrated in real time.
Matt, it sounds like your process went really well, but is there anything you would do differently looking back on it now?
No, not really. I mean, it's easy to say that, but the timing of it all worked out very well with regard to, we knew we needed to get in before we couldn't wait on certain things. Again, the only thing I would change, John, is I would do it all at once.
Oh, yeah.
That's truly the only thing that would be, cause less gray hairs, would be to do it all at once, and to have that, because I think we've had 3, and I didn't really talk about this as much as I should have probably. We had 3 at least 5-day power outage events, between when we put the solar on and we got the battery. Like, those were the frustrations, right? Like, to not have that, and to have the solar that's up there and not producing, and to not be able to use it. So my only thing would be, I'd like to be able to do it all at once, and have less disruption on our house, less, be able to integrate it all under one contractor, because now I have to talk to 3 different contractors if something goes wrong with different things. But that's about it.
One other point is that Span is coming out with an 150 as well as an 100 amp panel. So that will be very useful, since the large stock of 100 amp standard panels is out in the US, and if you want to electrify and want to be able to maintain the same same grid service, you have the ability for the span panels to start prioritizing services with your 100 amp service, and that really offers a lot of opportunity. So apparently it's supposed to come out in the May-June timeframe, these 2 panels.
That's a good point. And one other thing that they are also coming out with or have out currently is a car charger, EV charger, so that
Mhm.
you can have that communication of knowing, you know, what are you using to power your car. So being able to communicate and say, hey, use the battery from this, you know, at this time to charge. So it's yet another thing that we'll look to add.
Does it also allow at this point the uh, bi-directional charging with the car?
I don't know that any do at this point.
Management of that. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Matt, could you talk a
Matt,
little
that's a-
about what you talked about electrification, and I
Mhm.
know you had quite a few gas appliances when you first
Yeah.
bought the house. Did you switch to an electric stove, electric dryer? Or-
Yep, we have an induction stove, electric oven, and electric clothes dryer. The next step would be to swap over the gas water heater. And then eventually we'll change out the HVAC system. I'm in no hurry, only because I believe that the technology in air source heat pumps will continue to improve. I think that that's what eventually we'll go to. But I think that, again, that's just like everything else. It's one of those that I just need to be patient and wait for the technology to catch up with what I want, and then, and then we'll be okay. So eventually we will get there. And then, you know, if you're looking even further in the future, when we do re-roof the house, we will probably end up expanding the system, because we kind of have an east-west bias in the house. We can put it on the front of the house and not necessarily upsize the inverter or the interconnection, and just be able to have clipping. So it could definitely help out.
Well, we got a few more minutes, so we have time for like one or two more questions or comments.
Matt,
So-
I'm curious. Matt, I'm curious. Do you have an electric automobile?
Not yet. I'm holding on to everything I can for my 12-year-old car to keep going. Once it goes down, I'll never buy another ICE. At least a new one. I will buy an EV when the next one, but absolutely.
So a couple of things. A solar 15K, when the power goes off on the grid, the solar cells will continue to work. They've designed the system so it can pass all the isolation island tests. Now, in our unit system, we have an additional 11 solar panels that come through a solar edge that are then wired in through the AC coupled terminal on the solar. That solar edge definitely goes out when the grid's out, just like yours does, Matt. The other thing, so the Cadillac Lyriq it has a bidirectional capability. I'm waiting to have a system interface that's smart enough to let me program whether to charge the battery or let the car run off the battery, the house run off the battery in the car, because most of the cars are going to be around between 80 and 100 kilowatt hours. And I think there's somebody at the annual meeting, I was sitting next to me, pointed out soon we're going to have enough solar capacity in cars to power like the city of Muskegon, one of the western cities he was quoting, so that it would capability to do that, and that is eventually going to get tapped.
I have a solar edge set up within Tesla Gateway, and when the grid goes down, my solar system and the solar edge is all fully functional. So I don't quite understand what the difference is. I can literally be, if I have enough sun, I can be off the grid and feed batteries, and the solar edge is totally functional.
Yeah, and for the record, ours does work. Yeah, for sure. Ours works with the gateway. Does allow the solar edge to keep going.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dale.
So that question about a particular inverter, the Solarc has direct PV that comes into it, and there may be a limit to how much power the inverter can pass through to the rest of the house. When it's taking PV directly, he's got some direct PV wired straight into the inverter, and then also the AC coupled inverter that might have to pass through that also. But
Yeah.
any inverter, Solar Edge or any PV inverter, if it sees a waveform that looks like the grid, which the solar can do and does, then it'll connect to it and it'll start making power. But the solar, the way Harvey's system is set up, might have that particular limitation, and many inverters can be like that.
No, well, no, Dan, but to make sure, when the grid goes out, the PV comes straight into the house. There's not a problem at all. When the grid goes out, I can be isolated. What does happen is I've got a Solar Edge inverter that goes into a AC coupled terminals on the Solar. That Solar Edge, it's AC coupled, when it knows the grid's down, it stops providing power to the house or to the inverter. And the 15K, you're correct, refers to a max limit of how much load to the house. But you know, it can pump out 17, 18K to the grid on a bright sunny day. But the limit is how much the load is in the house, not how much is going out to the grid.
Okay, well, Jay, we're at 8:01, so Jay, you get the last question or comment. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make it fast. I have a Solarc 15K. It has 3 MPPT charge controllers. They do indeed continue to provide power to charge the battery and run the loads when you are off grid. However, AC coupled into the generator input, when you select that mode, I was using an N-phase system that I already had in place. So I coupled that in, AC coupled, figuring everything was going to be great. Turns out that is only for charging the battery. That is the only function of the AC coupled input, is to charge the battery. And if my batteries are at 100%, those solar loads disappear. And the way Solarc manages to turn them off is it shifts the frequency by about 3 hertz. So now all of a sudden, every clock in the house is running fast. And until the grid comes back, you know, then everything restores back to normal. So I disconnected all of the micro inverters, the IQ7s. I rewired that string for series, brought it into one of my MPPT3 inputs, and all is well. But I'm now sitting on 16 IQ7s. I have nothing to use them for. So anyway, that resolved that question. Good evening.
Cool.
Hey, well, we're past 8 o'clock, conscious of people's time. So, Matt, thanks for a fantastic presentation. And hey, thanks everybody for coming tonight. This has been a great sharing of information, and hope to see you next Thursday. Thanks again, Matt. Take care.